Well, thank you very much, Carolyn, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Carolyn, you gave away the entire vision before I even started the speech, but I'll try to add a little bit of value to it and connect it to libraries. It's a great honor for me to be here today. In fact, I'm inspired to be here. I've always believed in the centrality of libraries. Libraries are crucial to nurturing a strong and healthy democracy and more broadly to the success of our country. And I believe that librarians, more than bricks, mortar, and collections, are the most essential contributors of all. Now, I don't suppose I need to justify myself in this room for promoting the importance of libraries. But I would still like to share my reasoning and to argue that I'm not overstating the case. You know, one of my father's favorite sayings was that of philosopher George Santayana, his observation that those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. But it's more broadly true that those who lose track of or disregard our accumulated knowledge are even more doomed by their ignorance. So libraries are essential as accessible records of that knowledge. And librarians are essential because there is no algorithm for wisdom. We are in danger of forgetting this fact in our information age. An increasing number of people, companies, and governments have been seduced lately by the idea that all we need is Google. They think that because we have the internet, arguably the largest and most extensive library ever assembled, all we now need are sufficiently proficient web crawlers, virtual spider bots programmed to search, collate, categorize, and retrieve. You take that inexhaustible amount of information, add a clever assortment of mathematical formula, and voila, you can shrink buildings, cut storage fees, dispense with all those pesky people who've been telling you to shh. You've heard it before, right? Well, I think this is naive. Indeed, it's short-sighted in a dangerous way. And most obviously, it overlooks the substance and value of library resources that defy digitization. But as importantly, it overlooks the fact that no web crawler can ever come back from the stacks and say, you know, I couldn't find that source you're looking for, but I thought you might be interested in this. A library is not an abacus or even a supercomputer that harbors only the precise answers to specific questions. On the contrary, libraries by their nature are filled with surprises, with answers to questions you haven't thought to ask, and sometimes with questions that only you can answer. The magic in any library is to be found in the depth or breadth of its collection. Is not to be found in the breadth or depth of its collection. Slight variation. Sigh of relief. The world's greater and lesser collections are all capable of being magical in their own way. But a library where things are kept but never organized or accessed would more appropriately be called a midden, like a treasure that's never spent, its value is wasted. The alchemy occurs when the information is brought together. It occurs in that magical moment when a single piece of knowledge is brought to the attention of the seeker, or when two pieces of knowledge collide intentionally or sometimes serendipitously in the observer's hands. Just as history is helpful only if we attend to its lessons, knowledge is useful only if it's noticed and processed. And even then, knowledge doesn't automatically evolve into a higher order. Wisdom isn't the result of a mathematical exploration of predictable patterns, and it's not the product of an algorithm, no matter how elegant. Wisdom, discovery, revelation, call it what you will, flows from the observation of something that is unpredictable from pattern recognition alone. It's a creative phenomenon that occurs when the treasury of knowledge, having been assembled and organized, is made available to the user in the optimal way. It flows from the insights gleaned from a multitude of connections arising from a process of engagement. So I'm here today to make the case for the engaged library, just as I arrive as an advocate of the engaged university, as you might have seen from the notices that were up there before and from the introduction. For many of you, this might seem obvious. You could easily say, of course we're engaged with our users, with our communities, but it hasn't always been so. Not with libraries or with universities. Just as there's a university tradition of the ivory tower, of the academic cloister that eschews interaction with the broader community, There's a history of people in your profession who were convinced that their libraries would be all the more beautiful if people just didn't keep coming in and messing things up. Now, I'd argue that was never an appropriate view and hopefully never a dominant view, at least for libraries. But its vestiges remain. And with universities, many still resist making engagement with the community a central part of their mission. I would argue that engagement must be a mission because it requires a devout sense of purpose. To begin with, you must understand what engagement really means. In the university context, which I believe is comparable to that of libraries in many respects, the Carnegie Foundation has come to a definition that I find especially useful and I want to share with you. It refers to engagement as, and I'm quoting here, collaboration between higher education institutions and their larger communities for the mutually beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources in the context of partnership and reciprocity. Now, the best part of that definition, in my view, is captured in the last three words: partnership and reciprocity. There's been a trend in recent decades to think of the world in economic terms, to suggest that we are all purveyors of services and that everyone is a client or a customer. In this view, the people in our communities aren't partners or collaborators, they're consumers. This is the first mistake in establishing true engagement. It reduces everyone's efforts to outreach or worse, to marketing. Engagement is like dialogue. It only occurs if there's listening as well as talking. And the relationship involves mutual respect amongst equals. That's where we at SFU took this topic 2 years ago, soon after I became president, with an exercise in listening. We launched a process called Envision SFU, which produced one of the most extensive consultations ever undertaken by a Canadian university. I hasten to add, we didn't know that when we started out, but it turned out that way by the time we had finished. In part because there was such a willingness of people to tell us what they thought. In meetings and workshops, in person and online, we asked our students, our faculty and staff, and then we went outside the university and we asked our alumni, supporters, and interested citizens what they liked best about SFU and how we could make it even better. And the answer we got back was remarkably consistent. People said that what made SFU special in their mind was its energy, its openness, but most of all, its willingness to engage with its students in its research and especially in its relationships with the external communities that it serves. And as a result, we made it a key goal of our new strategic vision to build on that strength, to be the engaged university. A university defined by its dynamic integration of innovative education, cutting-edge research, and far-reaching community engagement. To achieve that goal, we realized that we needed to more fully engage students, not as clients or customers, but as collaborators in their own education. And we also need to increase opportunities for them to become involved in research and to engage the community through co-op education and other forms of experiential learning. In these ways, we aspire, in the words of the vision, and they were said by my introducer, to equip students with the knowledge, skills, and experiences that prepare them for life in an ever-changing and challenging world, by making education a much larger enterprise than that can occur only in a classroom. At the same time, we sought ways to encourage our faculty and staff to become further engaged by committing, for example, to build on a foundation of basic research to become, and again I'll quote from the vision, a world leader in research mobilization. We propose to do this by seeking, again quoting, opportunities to transfer the results of our research to the broader community, including policymakers, civil society leaders, and the community. Now, needless to say, our library has a huge role to play in this endeavor, even as it does in supporting students. Thankfully, we have librarians who are leaders in open access, digitization, and other strategies that enable our library to be an instrument for facilitation and the practice of community engagement. So we engage our students and promote their engagement in the community. We engage our faculty and staff and promote their efforts to leverage their knowledge for the public good. And in these ways, we, like librarians, help to develop an engaged and informed citizenry, and in the process, help to build a strong and healthy democracy. But in addition, we also take a very direct and strategic approach to engaging community with the entirety of our operation, even our physical infrastructure. And our strategic vision puts it this way. SFU will develop partnerships and maximize the capacities of its 3 campuses to enhance the social, economic, environmental, and cultural well-being of communities, both locally and globally. I raise this because of the extraordinary way in which SFU has been successful in leveraging its physical infrastructure to promote both community engagement and community betterment, a legacy of many works by many of my predecessors and others at the university. At our Vancouver campus, which the Vancouver Sun has referred to as the intellectual heart of the city, we've revived heritage buildings and in the process re-energized a fading business district. The 5 buildings that comprise that campus bring 7,000 students and 9,000 events such as meetings, conferences, dialogues, lectures, and performances into the downtown each year. Meanwhile, in Surrey, our campus has been the catalyst for another transformation of a neighborhood at risk. Once where there was a fading shopping district, there's now a vibrant and expanding Surrey City Center. And if you haven't been out there, it's really quite exciting to see how what used to be called Wale is emerging as a new metropolitan center for Greater Vancouver. Now, those of you familiar with the area will know that we haven't done this work alone. The Surrey Central Library is a beautiful new addition to the neighborhood and a valued partner in our own efforts to engage. SFU Surrey is fortunate to have 3 classrooms in that new building where we offer an extensive selection of continuing studies courses, and soon, thanks to a contribution from TD Bank, we'll be opening a community engagement center in the library that will enable us to more fully serve the needs of the South Fraser region. In this regard, I should note that libraries have been longtime leaders when it comes to this kind of physical placemaking. Unlike universities, which have been placed in strange places like the tops of mountains or the ends of peninsulas, to think of 2, the great libraries have traditionally been centers of engagement in civil society, located for the most part in the heart of communities. And I encourage you to maintain that role as you expand and hopefully grow. But even for those of you who manage smaller special libraries, it's important to remember, and for your funders to remember, that a library is not the stacks. Rather, it's a place where people gather to discover and discuss what's in the stacks, or more likely now, the databases. I recognize that for many of you, the call to become more engaged involves challenges of finding space, retaining space, or keeping space open for longer hours. Let me assure you, you're not alone in these challenges. And it speaks to another dimension in which the functions of engaged universities and engaged libraries overlap to mutual benefit, namely in the establishment and maintenance of a public square. Again, if I return to the SFU vision, we tried to capture this in the following way. We said that we wanted SFU to be, and I'm quoting, BC's public square for enlightenment and dialogue on key public issues, and to become known as the institution to which the community looks for education, discussion, and solutions. But I'll confess to you, we would be happy to have competitors and collaborators amongst regional libraries. Indeed, the best libraries have always served this role. They are places where ideas could be tested and truth could be pursued, safe spaces where people could speak freely about controversial issues. That's a library in the best sense of the word. It's also a university in the best sense of the word. We have much in common, and we can support each other in that endeavor.